Happy Thanksgiving to all who celebrate it. There are many things to be thankful for in this day and time. Family, friends, and everything in between. But further down on my list, I am grateful for some good horse racing. And that is what the Japan Cup has to offer us today, with 18 horses, all trying to win an international prize. Now when it comes to picking the winner of an international race, that has never been my greatest strength, but what I hope to achieve through this video is to spread information so that you can make a better, more educated guess on who you think will win. But I'll still talk about what I like and don't like when looking through this field. So with some of that out of the way, what is going on in this year's Japan Cup? Who are some of the horses that people consider strong favorites, and who are some of the outsiders? Let's start out with number 1, Justin Palace. Justin Palace is a very consistent racehorse. He has been in almost every major Japanese Grade 1 you can think of for the last couple of years, and he's always justified his existence in these races, regularly finishing in the top 5 somewhere in the mix. More recently, he has put in some of his best work, finishing 3rd in the Takarazuka Kinen, and then finishing 3rd again in the Tenno-sho Autumn. He rests usually in mid-pack or towards the last third of the field, and then he makes his move late in the race. But he's not a good winner. He's good at getting a piece of the pie. His last victory was over 30 months ago in the Tenno-sho Spring in 2023. The longest gap between a previous victory and then winning the Japan Cup was Suave Richard, who had an 18-month deficit between his last victory and the Japan Cup when he took it. So Justin Palace would be making a unique piece of history if he was able to win today. Despite being a consistent horse, the big thing that usually stops him from getting the victory is pace and the strength of the other opponents. If he were to win the Japan Cup, he would need the top-end horses to really weaken in the long straight, and he would need a good pace to set up. When horses have something left, they usually have enough strength to hold them off, such as in the Tenno-sho Autumn. The first half of the race was run in a relatively slow fraction of 1:02 for the first 5 furlongs, and then it really picked up in the second half, just under 57 seconds. That kind of speed was enough for the top horses like Masquerade Ball to hold off the late surge of Justin Palace. That slower pace also denied him in the 2024 Japan Cup, which had a very slow first part of the race, and because of that, he wasn't able to make up enough ground and could only get 5th. This year's Japan Cup does have some speed, but is far from the fastest Japan Cup that we have seen. So that kind of fast pace and meltdown that would make the difference between Justin Palace finishing 3rd and finishing 1st is probably not going to be there. He would need there to be an uncharacteristically very fast pace for him to win. He's a safe horse to trust and play around, but the slower potential pace that could happen in this year's Japan Cup is only going to play against him, as his final spurt will be forced to play against everybody else's. Number 2, one of the most popular horses going into this race, Croix Du Nord, who most recently had a disappointing performance in the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe. However, that disappointing performance does not disqualify him from running well in the Japan Cup. Last year, Shin Emperor didn't really show his best work in the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, and his next performance was the Japan Cup, where he dead heated for 2nd place. So a disappointment in the Arc does not mean disappointment in the Japan Cup per se. Shin Emperor, just like Croix Du Nord is right now, was also a 3-year-old horse making the very bold trek to try the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, and he managed to finish 2nd in last year's Japan Cup. So this sort of circumstance is far from enough to take Croix Du Nord out of the question. However, there still is a lot that he's going to have to prove. When talking about the history of Japan Cup winners, 3-year-old males are usually not the ones who win the race. The list of 3-year-old males that have won the Japan Cup go as follows: El Condor Pasa, Jungle Pocket, and Rose Kingdom, although the last one was through disqualification. Jungle Pocket, for beginning of a new era fans, is probably the closest horse to comparison for Croix Du Nord. Jungle Pocket is the only horse to win both the Tokyo Yushun and the Japan Cup in the exact same year. Croix Du Nord is trying to become the 2nd horse to pull off such a stunt. To his credit, Croix Du Nord does have a lot on his side. He's already won at Tokyo at 2,400 meters, and he defeated the favorite for this race, Masquerade Ball. But now the question is, has Masquerade Ball improved enough that now the tables have shifted, or has Croix Du Nord regressed? His connections were quite cautious when entering him and were considering skipping this race to run in the Arima Kinen. Clearly, Croix Du Nord has impressed them enough since his disappointment in the arc that they see this as a worthy race for him. But even though Shin Emperor did prove that a 3-year-old coming off an arc disappointment can run well in the Japan Cup last year, Croix Du Nord still has a big task ahead of them, having his first attempt against Japanese older males in this very race. He's going to have to be at his very best once more in one of the toughest races of his career. We'll see if he can handle all of that. After talking about one of the most popular horses for this race, let's talk about one of the least popular, Cosmo Kuranda, who currently, early on, is the second longest shot in this 18-horse field. This paints a rather bleak picture for this horse, but is it deserved? Well, his last victory was 20 months ago in the Yayoi show, so just like with the first horse we talked about, Judgment Palace, if he won, that'd be a historic gap between a previous victory and then taking the Japan Cup. However, compared to Judgment Palace, he is far less accomplished. Although he did finish second in the Satsuki show soon after that, he has been struggling a lot since. His last top 3 showing was in January of this year, and since then he's been throwing clunker after clunker, and seems to be below this level of competition. He was a full second slower in the final 3 furlongs against favorites like Masquerade Ball in the Tenno Show Autumn, which is a decent indicator of just how fast he can be when push comes to shove. Especially with the lack of true frontrunners in this year's Japan Cup, that finishing spurt is going to be about as important as anything in this very race. So even just being 1 second or a few lengths behind in terms of quality to such a loaded field like this is a big separator. I would avoid this horse. Number 4, Deep Monster. One of the 2 elder statesmen in this race, he is tied for the oldest horse in the field at age 7. Only one horse that old has won the Japan Cup, and that was in 1986 in its infancy when Jupiter Island took the race. However, while it hasn't happened in nearly 40 years, I feel like Deep Monster might be a decent chance of redoing history here. In horse racing, it's less about the age itself and how the horse is doing at that very age. There are horses that actually continue to improve and bloom as late as 7 years old. It's just that many don't get the chance to show that. A very rare but popular example of a horse who only got better with age all the way to the age of 7 was Stay Gold, who had his 2 biggest victories at that very age. Deep Monster is made from a very similar cloth. During his earlier career, his best victory was a listed victory, and after that, his best performance at the graded level was a 3rd in a G3. Most recently, he has rattled off 2 consecutive G3 showings, and then he finally kicked the door down by winning his first graded stakes race in the G2 Kyoto Daishoten in his very last start. That was by far the biggest victory of his entire life, and packed that in with his 2 consecutive graded stakes showings in his 2 starts before that, he has never looked better in his career. He is blooming, you could say. It also helps that the Kyoto Daishoten is a historically very good prep for the Japan Cup. 2 of the last 10 winners of the Japan Cup won the Kyoto Daishoten as a springboard, including most recently in 2022, Vela Azul. Also in that race, he defeated other Japan Cup contenders like Sunrise Earth and the well-liked Admire Terra to win the race, and also, the race was a pure mad dash, where the horse with the best final spurt prevailed, and in that very race, it was Deep Monster. So if the Japan Cup were to come up slow, Deep Monster would be in contention because of his good final burst. So despite his age, I would suggest taking a look at this old guy, and give him at least some consideration. And speak of the devil, number 5 is Sunrise Earth. Whether you like this horse or not, There is no doubt that he is going to be very important for this race, as he is one of the few horses that has the ability to be a frontrunner, as shown with his victory in the Hanshin Daishoten, his most recent victory of all. The thing with Sunrise Earth, however, is that he is shown to be more successful at longer distances than 2400 meters. He can shorten up to this classic distance, but his big victory, the Hanshin Daishoten, was 3000 meters, and he was able to do his best work because he was able to have a comfortable, slow pace that he got to set by himself. Something that he could have the opportunity to do in this year's Japan Cup if he's left relatively uncontested by the few frontrunners, which would likely come in the form of Shin Emperor and Ho-Oh Biscuits. He's also shown to be tactical, willing to be passed later in a race and then find his way back to the front with the energy that he has conserved. He just has to be in control. His runner-up showing in the Kyoto Daishoten to the powerful Deep Monster was also a good indicator of what he can do with a slower pace, even at a distance like 2400 meters, when you could argue that he's a better stayer. If you like playing horses based off of style, in terms of frontrunners, I'd say that he is definitely one of the most talented, and also one of the strongest, with the inherent stamina that comes with his staying ability and victories over such long distances. You don't have to worry too much about Sunrise Earth tiring out. Worst comes to worst, he will fight to the bitter end, even after facing the brunt of the early fractions. And with the break he did take from the Tennosho Spring to the Kyoto Daishoten, you can also argue that that performance in the Kyoto Daishoten shakes off a little bit of the rust that comes with these extended break periods, so he'll be sharper going into the Japan Cup. Number 6, Ho-Oh Biscuits, one of my favorite names of this field. Unfortunately, I don't have as much faith into his ability to win this race. Ho-Oh Biscuits has yet to run further than 2400 meters with success. His best performances have been at 1800 and 2000 meters respectively. The shortest distance that a Japan Cup winner in recent memory has won at before winning the Japan Cup is 2200 meters. The longest race that Ho-Oh Biscuits has won is 2,000 meters, and he's pretty good at 2,000 meters. He finished third in last year's Tennosho Autumn, but this year he did disappoint. At shorter distances, he's also ran very credibly with 2 back-to-back second-place finishes in the Minichi Oken. His only performance at 2,400 meters, he finished 6th in the Tokyo Yushun when he was a 3-year-old. But with his longest career victory to date being 2,000 meters, something that historically has yet to occur for any Japan Cup winner, I would be very concerned about his ability to handle the extra 400 meters in this race. If you want to go for a horse with early speed, I'd recommend picking either Sunrise Earth or Shin Emperor before choosing Ho-Oh Biscuits. Ho-Oh Biscuits would only be my choice if the name of the horse is what you consider most important. Number 7, Danon Beluga, the longest shot in this field. Unfortunately, he has earned that title through consistently subpar efforts in Japan. He's had some success internationally, finishing in the top 3 in the Dubai Turf. However, in his homeland of Japan, things have been a bit bleaker. At one point, he was considered a very good 3-year-old, but his transition to an older horse has been rather rough. He has a good turn of foot, but especially recently, as a prior participant of the Japan Cup, he hasn't looked worse going into a Japan Cup than this year, and he already struggled to win in his previous attempts at the race, so I would personally pass on him. Number 8, the International Invader, Calandagan. There's a lot of questions when talking about this horse. First, the history of the Japan Cup as an international race. When it was first created, the Japan Cup was meant to be a fully international affair and bring horses from all over the world. However, in the last 20 years, participation has dwindled, and especially success. The last winner of the Japan Cup to not come from Japan was Al Qasid, who was an American-bred but European-trained horse, who won by a nose bob over Heart's Cry. After that, the only non-Japan trained horse to finish in the top 3 was Ouija Board, who was third in 2006. Part of the reason for the decline in international participation is how much stronger the Japanese horse racing breed has become since the Japan Cup's inauguration in 1981. The sting of defeat that Mersey Doates brought them in 1981 caused Japan to go into overdrive and really improve their racing stock, and since then it's been a lot harder to get a horse to succeed in Japan. As well as that, just shipping to a new country is always difficult and a bit of a mystery on how well the horse will handle it. And on top of that, there are many more options since the Japan Cup was first invented. Right before the Japan Cup, by a couple of weeks, you can run in the Breeders' Cup Turf, and after the Japan Cup, by 2 weeks, you can run in the Hong Kong Vase or Hong Kong Cup, which are considered much more possible to win by international invaders, and thus more appetizing, despite the fact the Japan Cup has an incredible amount of prize money to offer any horse who is daring enough to try and take on the Japanese horses. Calandagan is the brave solo horse who is daring to try this. He stands to win a lot of money, which is important for him because he's a gelding. All the money he will earn will come from his racing affairs. And he's easily the highest rated horse that has come to Japan in some time, and he's never looked better. Since his defeats last year in races like the Champion Stakes and his defeat to Danon Decile earlier in the Dubai Shima Classic, he's only gotten better. In fact, he's one of the most consistent horses in this entire field and the whole world. In his last 12 career starts, he's either been first or second, and most recently, winning has been his favorite thing to do, with 3 consecutive Group 1 victories, including the Grand Prix de St. Cloud, which was the victory that got Alcacid to win the Japan Cup in 2005, so keep that in mind. Calandagan has certainly only looked better and better. He's the best horse in Europe and has taken on every great European horse he could going into this, and now he takes on the world. He's fine with shipping, finishing second in the Dubai Shima Classic, and it seems like he's only improved since that performance. Also, his connections have been nothing but positive in terms of how the horse has handled the travel, saying that he's adjusting to training on the track well, that he hasn't lost any weight, and is still the same horse that they know and love. So, all things considered, if he can handle the change in Japan track, then he should bring his best performance, which could be very scary. But he still is going to have to deal with a lot, especially history. But if there was an international horse to win the Japan Cup, Calandagan is one of the most likely. Number 9, Seiun Hades. For fans of Seiun Sky, yep, same owner, same crown name. They are absolutely connected. Unfortunately, Seiun Sky was a far better horse than Seiun Hades is, but he's not worthless. Most recently, Seiun Hades won the Epsom Cup, his biggest victory to date. However, just like a previous horse that I mentioned, Ho-Oh Biscuits, the longest race that he has ever won at is 2,000 meters. Every winner of the Japan Cup in recent memory, at minimum, has a victory at least at 2,200 meters or longer before taking the race. So already a huge red flag is to be put. He does have, in his favor, some early speed and the ability to stalk, but more recently he has taken a more come-from-behind approach to get some of his most recent big victories, so I'm not sure how much he will affect the front pace, but he could if they decide to go back to some of his older tricks. Most recently, he finished 7th in the Tenno Autumn after a break from his victory in the Epsom Cup. In that performance, he ran only a 1/10 of a second slower in his final 3 furlongs than the winner, Masquerade Ball. The problem? He was multiple lengths behind, so he wasn't able to get close enough to the leaders to make an impact. So, theoretically, if he had that same closing kick but was closer to the pace, he could really improve off of that performance. But that's only if. With the depth of this field, I would move away from Seiun Hades, unless you are still very sentimental about the Seiun crown name. Number 10, Struve. One of a couple horses who ran in last year's Japan Cup who is returning for this year. In last year's Japan Cup, he started the year very well, winning back-to-back G2s, the Nikkei Show, and the Magurakinen at 2,500 meters at Tokyo Racecourse. But then he had a disappointing performance in the Takarazuka Kinen, and then didn't race for 5 months to attempt to run in the Japan Cup. Unfortunately, his last victory still remains as the Magurakinen from May of 2024, so he has yet to win a race in over 17 months. So that's pushing him towards Suave Richard in terms of gap. But there are a few things still in his favor. Compared to last year, Struve is going to be a lot more wound tight and sharper. Last year, he came into the Japan Cup with a 5-month break, so he probably wasn't as sharp as he should have been. Meanwhile, this year, he finished 5th in the Copa Republica Argentina, only a length behind his opponents. So, a deceptively good 5th place finish. And, with that race being earlier this month, he will be sharper going into the Japan Cup. But personally, even though he should run better than he did last year, I don't think it's going to be enough to make up the deficit and make him a winner. He's a nice horse who might improve a little bit off of some of his more recent form, but I just don't think that's enough. Number 11 admire Terra, the gray horse of this field. So for those who like a horse of a pretty color, or a different color, this is the horse for you. There also are other, stronger reasons other than just pageantry that make him a good chance here. This year, he won the G2 Meguro at Tokyo Racecourse, the biggest race of his career. So you already know he likes the distance and also the track itself. Along with that victory in the Meguro, he is a generally consistent horse. Since July of 2024, he has raced 6 times and has finished in the top 3 in 5 of them. The only time that he wasn't in the top 3 was most recently with his 4th place finish in the Kyoto Daishoten to Deep Monster, a race that was coming off of a layoff and should make him sharper for this race in the Japan Cup. Also, the finish of the Kyoto Daishoten was very close, so even though he finished 4th, he really wasn't that far behind the eventual winner of the race, Deep Monster. He's got a good closing kick, and is quite consistent. Along with winning the Meguro, he was 3rd last year in the Kikisho at 3,000 meters, so stamina is not going to be an issue for him, and he has the strength to hold on when there's a mad dash involved, and can withstand a slower pace, which could happen in this year's Japan Cup. If you like consistency and a gray color, then this horse is absolutely for you. Number 12, Yoho Lake, the other 7-year-old in this field. Now, similarly to Deep Monster, he's had quite a nice year. At one point, he didn't race for a full 2 years after winning his first G2 in 2022. Since his return as a 6-year-old in 2024, he has ran 8 times and he has finished 3rd or better in 6 of them, including in Grade 1 company this year, when he was 3rd in the Osaka Hay. He also won this year's Kyoto Kinen, his 2nd G2 of his career. So similar to Deep Monster, he's a 7-year-old horse who has had some of his best performances come in his later years. Although in Yoho Lake's case, a bit of it comes down to making up for lost time. He did lose quite a chunk of his career to injury, and he has recovered quite well. His late kick in the Osaka Hay with a 33.5 for the final 3 furlongs does indicate that he can finish very strongly, and he is a Grade 1 caliber horse still at this advanced age. But personally, I'm going to lean more towards Deep Monster. I like the recency of his victory a bit more, the more recent historical success of winners of the Kyoto Daishoten in the Japan Cup. I think that Deep Monster is developing and peaking at the right time. Meanwhile, Yoho Lake has more consistently held form, but his best performances were a little earlier in the year. Still, these 7-year-olds prove that they absolutely deserve to run in the Japan Cup, despite their advanced age. And you know what? I always love seeing older horses try big races. Number 13, Brede Wig, the lone mare in this field, so for those who like a mare winning the Japan Cup, something that has happened multiple times, then go with this one. In terms of form, she does have some strong history. In 2023, she won the G1 QE2 Commemorative Cup at 2,200 meters, so she is a G1 caliber horse. But after an 11-month absence, it's been a hard road to get back to that sort of level. She was well backed in the Tennosho Auto most recently, but she disappointed greatly, finishing 10th in that race. She is a talented horse, but most of her recent performances have been at shorter distances, from about 1,600 to 2,000 meters, while her win in the Commemorative Cup proves that she can win as far as 2,200 meters, which is close to the 2,400 meter distance. She has yet to really prove herself at 2,400 meters specifically, and she seems to come off as a horse who prefers slightly shorter distances, along with tailing off a bit since that victory in the Commemorative Cup, so she doesn't seem to be coming in off of her best efforts. Number 14, Danon Decile, last year's winner of the Tokyo Yushun, and this year's winner of the Dubai Shima Classic. This is one of the strongest horses in Japan. However, he is coming off probably his weakest performance in recent memory, when he disappointed in the Juddmonte International, although the only horse he beat that day was Durrezza, the winner of the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, so clearly a bad performance in the Juddmonte International does not curse you for the whole year. It's also pretty easy to write off that race because Danon Decile is a 2,400 meter horse through and through. The Juddmonte International was about 2,000 meters long or so, which is shorter than what he likes. He also came into the race more hot and excited than he normally does, which exhausted him early. The turn of foot also required for this shorter European race just didn't fit with what his style usually has, which was more appropriate in the Dubai Shima Classic and the Tokyo Yushun. Now that he's back to his favorite distance and also one of his favorite tracks, I think that he's going to do a lot better. All he has to do is just bounce off and shake off the rust a bit and he'll be good as gravy. It also is a big advantage in his corner, knowing that he did defeat Calandagan this year, the big international threat. He's already dealt with him on a relatively fair, even playing field of the Mideast. Now, he's going to be facing off against Calandagan again, this time on his home turf. If he has his day, he's going to be hugging the rail and then moving his way up on the inside from mid-pack to take over and hold off all comers late to win the race. But that is if the best Danon Decile is going to show up, and not the one from the Juddmonte International. Number 15, Masquerade Ball, the favorite for this race, and why not? He's got the big rider, Christophe Lemaire, who most would argue is one of the best jockeys in all of Japan outside of Yutaka Take. He won the Tennosho Autumn, which is considered one of the best preps for the Japan Cup, and he's only looking better. Earlier in the year, he was about second best. He finished third in the Satsuki Show to Museum Mile in Croix Du Nord, and then he chased and was second in the Tokyo Yushun to Croix Du Nord, although he was gaining ground in that race, which is a good indicator. And then, in the absence of Croix Du Nord, he won the Tennosho Autumn against Museum Mile, one of the other horses to have previously defeated him this year. Now it's time for him to try and get revenge on Croix Du Nord. On the exact same battlefield they faced off against 5 months ago. While he has a lot to like, a great finishing kick, he's only improved as a 3-year-old, he's coming in off his best race, he's won a race that historically has boded well for Japan Cup winners, and he's got a great jockey, Masquerade Ball still has quite a bit of an ask on his hands. 3-year-old horses may have won the Tennosho Autumn in the past, and Tennosho Autumn horses may have gone on to win the Japan Cup in the past, but never both. If Masquerade Ball were to win the Japan Cup, he'd be the first 3-year-old to win the Autumn Double, the Tennosho Autumn and the Japan Cup. So while the odds are in his favor and he has beaten quite a lot of tough horses before this, he still will probably be facing the hardest race of his entire career in the Japan Cup. But if he does it, he will be making history, and if he's able to keep this going en route to the Arimakinen, he could be an Autumn Triple Crown winner. But let's not jump ahead. First, he needs to win the Japan Cup just as well as he did the Tennosho Autumn. Number 16, Shin Emperor, one of the 2 runner-ups in last year's Japan Cup. Since then, he had some highs and some big lows. He won the Neum Turf Cup after his courageous effort in the Japan Cup, but then he tailed off in the Shima Classic and the Irish Champion Stakes. Originally supposed to return in the Arc, respiratory and bleeding issues derailed that plan, so his disappointment in the Irish Champion Stakes is his most recent performance. However, a bad performance going into the Japan Cup did not stop him last year from having an ideal performance in the Japan Cup, where he was able to take advantage of the lack of pace and use his early speed to control and run a tepid Japan Cup, which helped him fight on to finish second in a dead heat, only beaten by the late flying Deuce. This year, with Sunrise Earth and Ho-Oh Biscuits, he doesn't have a lot of early speed to deal with, but more than he did last year, which makes repeating this effort somewhat more difficult, but not impossible. The extra break may also help him come back fresh. Clearly, a 12th in the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe was not enough to stop him from running well in the Japan Cup, so would a disappointing performance in the Irish Champion Stakes be just as big of a detergent? He has good early speed, and he's been in the thick of it in a lot of very major races, but he's yet to kick the door down and finally win that elusive G1. Could this finally be the year? We'll have to wait and see. And now for the other half of that dead heat, Durrezza, winner of the 2023 Kika Show. At one point, he strung along a series of victories that maxed at 5 wins, with the Kika Show being his crown jewel. but since then, he has yet to win another race, although he certainly has run good since then. Like Danon Decile, he had an underwhelming performance in the Judma International. In his case, Durrezza was able to use that en route to running a very credible second in the Japan Cup, using his late burst of speed to dead heat with Shin Emperor and just be passed by Deduce. He has a great turn of foot and incredible stamina, slowly uncorking himself over the course of a race. And compared to last year, he'll get a bit more pace, which is likely to benefit him, but he still has a patchy 2025 season to overcome, including most recently having a disappointing 8th place finish in the Kyoto Daishoten as the top weight carrier, losing to horses like Deep Monster and Sunrise Earth, along with Admire Terra. He'll be a bit fresher than when he was in the Kyoto Daishoten, but he still has to deal with a lot of the same horses that people were expecting him to already know how to defeat, so there is a little bit of that mystery factor. Also, earlier this year, he came third in the Dubai Shima Classic behind Danon Decile and Calandagan, so Calandagan has the edge over him, and so does Danon Decile. So the question is, what now? Will he be able to defeat all of these different horses who have an edge over him at least so far in the 2025 season? Is he going to be able to turn back the clock to his Kikisho performance, or his second place finish in the Japan Cup? That's what you're going to have to take the risk on if you're going to bet Durrezza. He's a very pretty horse, and he has a lot of power, but he also has to deal with stern competition, which has defeated him time and time again since his last win all the way back in 2023. A longer gap than any horse has ever done in history. Suave Richard at 18 months, Durrezza, 25 months. And lastly, number 18, Tastiera. What's better than having this year's and last year's Tokyo Yushun winner? Well, why not? The 2023 Tokyo Yushun winner. The last 3 winners of the Japanese Derby back to back to back. Since his initial victory in the 2023 Tokyo Yushun, he had a 6-race losing streak going on, where he ran well in other major races, but was mostly a background player. But then he finally proved that he still had something left when he won successfully on the international stage in the 2025 Queen Elizabeth Cup. But then after that performance came a major disappointment in the Tenno-sho Autumn. So far, the excuse was a presumptuous move on the backstretch which tired him out going into the top of the stretch, which is why he performed worse than he did last year where he was second only to Deduce. Whether that holds going into the Japan Cup, we're about to find out, but generally, he's always been better at longer distance racing, winning the 2400 meter Tokyo Yushun, so we know he loves both the distance and the racetrack, and also coming second at 3,000 meters in the Kikisho to Durrezza all the way back in 2023. He's a strong, consistent horse who never seems too far away when he makes his mad dash at the end. While he is going to have to deal with the wrath of 2 other Yushun winners and many other very qualified horses, don't ever fully count this guy out. And those are your horses for the Japan Cup. For who I'm going to be going with? For my main favorite horses, I'm going to lean towards Danon Decile and the international invader Calandagan. I think that it's about time that a horse not from Japan steals the Japan Cup. I think that if Calandagan is able to do this, it should open the floodgates for trainers to see the Japan Cup as a possible venture and opportunity. And for some of my down below horses that I think still are very legitimate but may not be betted as favorably, I'm going to go with the frontrunner Sunrise Earth and the late developing Deep Monster. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this analysis and have now a better idea of who you want to pick in this year's Japan Cup. Who do you think's gonna win? Let me know in the comment section below. And for what reasons? Do you like a horse for their stats, their name, their relation to your favorite Uma Musume character? All reasons totally valid and just as effective at helping you pick the winner of the Japan Cup. See you guys next time.